I started working the night shift at a gas station a few months ago. I was 26 and hoping to save money for college. The gas station sat at the intersection of two empty highways. Fields stretched around it, and a thick line of trees loomed in the distance. The flickering fluorescent lights made it feel strangely inviting, but mostly they just creeped me out. On my first night, I stood behind the register at midnight. The road outside was empty. It was too quiet, and I didn't like it. Suddenly, I heard the door ding. I looked up and saw a man walk in. He seemed out of place, wandering the aisles, glancing at snacks but not buying anything. I caught him staring at me a few times. His expression felt unreadable. I tried to convince myself he was just tired from driving, but I couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Minutes crawled by. I glanced at the clock. It was only 12:10. My heart sped up when he came to the counter. His hands trembled as he fished out a crumpled old coin. It looked ancient and heavy. I hesitated, not wanting to take it, but I didn't want to be rude. I took the coin, though it felt cold in my hand, almost like it was burning me. After he left, a strange smell hit me. It was faint but unmistakable, like smoke, circling in from somewhere. I looked around the store, half expecting someone to jump out from behind the aisles. But it was just me, and the chill in the air made me shiver. I didn't remember anyone bringing in food, so I tried to dismiss it. Maybe I was just tired. The next night, while cleaning the restroom, I noticed fresh tire tracks on the gravel outside. No car was parked. I stared outside, puzzled. Who parked here at night? I felt a knot in my stomach. The gas station, once my refuge, now felt haunted. The buzzing lights above seemed to taunt me. Then the customer with the old coin came back a week later. He just stood there, staring at me. I felt my heart race. I didn't know how to break the silence. Finally, I asked if he needed help. He just smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. My skin crawled. Now, as I sit here thinking about those nights, I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Each check of the clock feels like a countdown. I've started to wonder what goes on at this gas station when I close up each night. I can't help but feel like I'm losing my mind. Then, the lights flickered again, and I heard the door creak open behind me. I turned around. Nobody was there. The empty aisles felt darker, and I knew I wasn't alone. I felt my heart pounding as I gripped the counter. The unease washed over me, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay. I could hardly shake off the feeling of dread that clung to me as I stood behind the counter. The heavy silence pressed down like a weight. I forced myself to breathe. I couldn't let fear consume me. I had to act normal, focus on the job. Then, at a little past 1 a.m., a car pulled into the lot. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the gas pumps ahead. My heart raced. Maybe it was a friendly face, someone who could break the monotony of the night. I watched as the engine shut off, and the driver stepped out. It was a woman, tall and disheveled, her hair wild against the night air. She glanced around, a look of confusion etched on her face. As she approached the entrance, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. She seemed uncertain, like she was hesitating on whether to come inside or turn back. "Can I help you?" I called out, forcing my voice to sound steady. She turned towards me, and her eyes were wild, darting as if she were searching for something or someone. "Do you have a bathroom?" she asked, her voice shaky. I pointed to the back of the store. "Yeah, just down that hallway." She nodded but didn't walk away right away. Instead, she stared at me for a moment, as if she were trying to read something in my expression. "You need to lock the door. It's not safe out here," she whispered urgently. My stomach sank. "What do you mean?" She looked behind her, fear flooding her face. "I don't know how to explain. Just be careful." Without another word, she turned and rushed toward the bathroom. I immediately jumped up and locked the front door. The tension in the air made my skin prickle. I stepped out from behind the counter, glancing out the big windows. The darkness outside felt thicker somehow, pressing in. Moments passed. I paced the floor, waiting for the woman to come back. I could hear her moving around in the washroom. An unsettling thought crept into my mind. What was she running from? And why did she think locking the door would help? I looked at the clock. It was 1:20 a.m. My throat felt tight as I thought about the trails of smoke from earlier and the man with the coin. Then, out of nowhere, the door behind me rattled. I instinctively turned, my heart pounding. It was just a gust of wind, but it felt more like a warning. The sound of running water stopped. A few seconds later, the woman emerged, looking even more frantic. She started, her hands trembling. I shouldn't have come here. What do you mean? I asked, anxiety threading through my voice. Before she could answer, the lights flickered violently, plunging the store momentarily into darkness. I felt a cold breath sweep across my skin. When the lights came back on, she was standing still, staring wide-eyed at the front door. I followed her gaze, but nothing was there. A creeping sense of dread filled the space. That S when the front doorbell chimed. The sound echoed through the empty store, but I couldn't see anyone. My heart raced again, this time more intensely. It was time to face my fears. I stepped towards the door, but the woman gripped my arm tightly. We need to get out of here, she said, her voice sharp with urgency. I glanced back at the door. Why? What's out there? And then it struck me that unsettling thought from the last few nights came rushing back. I was in too deep, and I was about to find out just how deep the shadows ran. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. What do you know? I pressed. The woman shook her head, her breath quickening. I don't have time to explain. You just need to trust me. That wasn't easy. I barely knew her. But her urgency cut through my panic. I stood frozen, only half listening as she glanced nervously around the store. Then I caught a faint noise, like footsteps approaching from outside. I squinted through the glass, searching for a shadow or movement. All I saw was emptiness. Still, the sound crept closer, the crunching of gravel unmistakable. What is that? I whispered, my heart racing. I turned slowly, expecting to see her face twist in fear. Instead, she looked at me, her eyes wide with realization. It's him, she said, her voice barely a breath. Who? I don't know, but he is dangerous. I was followed. Chills broke out along my spine. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me. What do you mean followed? By who? I don't know. Her voice rose. Please, we just need to get out of here. I was torn. Should I trust her? I felt the weight of the door behind me, the one I had secured tightly moments before. Outside, the steps stopped, replaced by a sudden silence. For a split second, I thought about opening the door to look out, but terror gripped me. Then, without warning, the lights flickered again. This time, they didn't come back on. The store plunged into darkness, save for the emergency exit sign glowing dimly. Stay close to me, I urged, panic fueling my voice. Suddenly, the glass door shuddered with a force that jolted me back, sending a rush of adrenaline through my veins. The woman pressed against me, her nails digging into my arm. Don't let him in, she cried. I felt my voice dying in my throat. There were no words left for this. A heavy thump reverberated against the door, and I jumped. My eyes darted around the darkness, desperate for a weapon. Then the door bell chimed again, more insistent this time, and the pounding came once more, harder and unyielding. Lock it! Lock it! She hissed. I glanced toward the register. If I went back, would I be walking away from the very door I needed to protect? But I had to do something. My heart pounded, and I just hoped the fear in my eyes didn't match the terror in hers. Before I could act, the door rattled again and cracked open slightly. A sliver of moonlight cast shapes in the dimness. That S when I saw it, a figure standing just outside, shrouded in shadow. It was a man, but I couldn't make out his face. With renewed urgency, I rushed to slam the door shut. My hands fumbled with the lock as I could feel the weight of his presence bearing down on me. Get behind the counter, I yelled, pushing her away from the door. Just then, the emergency lights flickered back on, illuminating the store. But the man was gone. The silence that filled the space felt more menacing than before. "I don't think we're alone anymore," the woman said, trembling. The words struck me like ice, sending dread curling in my stomach. What now? We had locked the door, but what if he came back? I glanced back at the window. The darkness outside loomed, and my heart sank. Whatever was happening, it wasn't over. And just then, a soft footstep echoed from the back of the store. The footsteps echoed again, clearer this time, and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. I scanned the dim aisles of the store, my heart racing. What was I thinking? I de-locked the door. We should be safe. But the icy fear creeping into my veins told me otherwise. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, keeping my voice low. I glanced at the woman, who peered out from behind the register. Her eyes were wide and fearful, mirroring my own. She nodded slowly, her expression a mix of dread and resolution. "We have to check. Maybe it's just a customer?" I shot her an incredulous look. A customer? At this hour? No way. It could be him. Behind me, the footsteps came again, slow, deliberate, almost mocking. I gripped the edge of the counter, thoughts racing. I really didn't want to see what was back there, but I couldn't just sit here. "Stay here," I commanded, inching away from the register. I felt ridiculous for even suggesting it. We both knew there was no safe place. "I'm going to see what's going on." Before she could protest, I took a deep breath and stepped away from the counter. The store had never felt so vast and empty. Each aisle seemed to stretch infinitely, shadows pooling in corners where light barely reached. "Oh God," she gasped, clutching the counter. I moved cautiously toward the back, where the soft sound had emanated from. My eyes darted around, searching for anything out of place. I listened intently, the silence almost deafening. The emergency lights cast an eerie glow that seemed to waver, adding to my growing unease. As I approached the door to the storage room, something fluttered in my peripheral vision. I spun around, expecting a threat. Instead, it was just a plastic bag snagged on a shelf, rustling in the draft. "See? It's nothing," I murmured, forcing myself to sound brave. I turned back, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Just then, the door creaked open a fraction. I froze. Was someone on the other side? I backed away slightly, contemplating if I should call out, but before I could, a slender hand gripped the edge of the door. The handle turned slowly as I watched in frozen horror. "What are you doing?" the woman hissed from behind me. I held a finger to my lips, urging her to stay quiet. The door swung open, revealing only shadows. I took a tentative step closer, heart racing. "Hello?" I called, trying to sound steady. No response. Then I noticed something on the floor in front of the door, a small, folded piece of paper. I bent down, despite every instinct warning me not to. I picked it up, and as I unfolded it, my breath caught. It was a drawing, a crude sketch of the store, with an ominous figure scribbled just outside. "What is it?" she asked, stepping closer, her eyes widening in fear. I didn't respond. I was scanning the rest of the note. That S when the lights flickered violently above, plunging us back into darkness. "Get back!" I shouted, but it was too late. A figure stepped into the dim light, donning a twisted smile, loomed behind the counter. Then, everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart pounding. The fluorescent lights blinked back to life, casting a sterile glare over everything. I was on the floor, disoriented, catching my breath. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet. "Where is she?" I whispered, desperately scanning the store. The woman was gone. A cold pit formed in my stomach. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. Silence filled every corner of the store, thick and haunting. I edged closer to the counter, half expecting to see her there. Instead, there was no one, just the ominous figure still standing behind it, its face as twisted as its grin. "Hey! Are you okay?" I shouted, half hoping for a response, half scared of what might come next. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. It felt unreal, like a living nightmare. I squinted, trying to make sense of the silhouette. Suddenly, I noticed something on the floor by the counter, something glinting, catching the flickering lights. Cautiously, I stepped closer. It was a small key, old and rusted. I picked it up and turned it over in my hand, remembering the locked storage room. I was running out of options, and this could be the only way out. I took a deep breath and moved toward the storage door. "Please be open," I murmured. When I inserted the key into the lock, it fit perfectly. The door creaked as I pushed it open, darkness spilling out like an unwelcome presence. Inside, the air was stale and heavy. My hands shook as I reached into the dimness, feeling my way along the shelves. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, their labels faded and barely visible. I ran my fingers along the surface, searching for anything that could help. That's when I noticed a red flicker reflecting off the wall. I turned, heart racing again. There was a small monitor, just a tiny CCTV screen, showing different angles of the store. I stepped closer, focusing on the screens. One of them showed the entrance, the other captured the aisles. My breath hitched when I caught sight of movement near the other aisle, a shadow passing swiftly. I wasn't alone. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself. "Just breathe." I peered closer, wishing I could see who or what it was. My instincts screamed at me to run, but curiosity rooted me in place. I couldn't go back out there without knowing. As I switched to another camera view, I gasped. The figure was now in the aisle, creeping toward the storage room with an unnatural grace. I could see it more clearly now, tall, emaciated, wearing a grin that stretched impossibly wide. "No," I murmured, pulling my phone from my pocket. The battery was almost dead, but I quickly hit dial on the emergency contacts. But before the call could connect, everything flickered out again. The monitors shut off. The store was plunged back into darkness, and I felt something cold against my neck. "Looking for something?" A whisper filled the room. I froze, paralyzed by fear. My breath caught in my throat. The voice was close, too close. I whipped around, but all I saw was darkness. My instincts kicked in, and I bolted back toward the door, adrenaline surging through me. I needed to escape this room, to get out of this store. As I flung the door open, the light from the aisle outside flooded in, bright and harsh, but I didn't care. I dashed into the main area, heart pounding. I glanced around, eyes darting. The store felt infinite. The aisles stretched away from me like a maze. I needed a plan. The figure was still in the store, and I was running out of places to hide. I turned back to scan the aisles, searching for something, a weapon, a means of defense, anything. That's when I saw it, a baseball bat carelessly propped against one of the shelves. I sprinted over and grabbed it, feeling the weight settle comfortably in my hands. It was solid, reassuring, and for a moment, I felt like I had a fighting chance. But as I turned back toward the aisles, a freezing chill crawled up my spine. Something was moving. I couldn't see exactly what it was, but it glided. No, it slithered between the shelves, too fluid to be human. My stomach churned at the thought. I needed to find a way out. Maybe there was another exit I had missed. Keeping low, I crept along the aisles, peeking over the edges, my heart hammering. Each creak of the floor felt like a countdown clock. The store was alive with shadows, and I was the lone target. Then I heard it again, the whisper, lingering closer this time. "You shouldn't be here." I felt freezing fingers of dread grip my heart. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice quaking. No response, just silence. I pivoted quickly, trying to locate the source of the voice, but the aisle was empty. Just as I turned, a flicker of motion caught my eye. There, in the corner of the store, a door I hadn't noticed before was ajar. My breath quickened. It was a back exit, surely a way to freedom if I could reach it. I took several deep breaths to steady myself. This had to be it. I dashed toward the door, adrenaline propelling me forward, my bat held ready. But as I reached for the handle, footsteps echoed behind me. I turned to see a figure lingering at the end of the aisle, shadowy and menacing. Going somewhere? It hissed, stepping closer. I steeled myself, gripping the bat tighter. I couldn't show fear. Stay back! I shouted, though my voice wavered. I was out of time. The door was so close, but was it a way out or another trap? The figure took a step forward, its grin wider than before. I had to make a choice, and I had to make it fast. Before I could think twice, I lunged toward the door, praying it would lead me to safety. But when I pushed it open, I was met not with freedom, but with another darkness that stretched endlessly. And then I realized I had just walked into a nightmare of my own making. The darkness wrapped around me like a thick blanket, and for a moment, I couldn't see anything at all. I stepped back, but the figure loomed closer, taking shape against the dim light that flickered from the other room. My heart raced. I couldn't tell if it was the fear or the dread of what awaited me. Turn back, it growled, that voice still echoing in my brain. You don't belong here. I gripped the bat, ready to swing, but my instinct told me to listen. Something about its tone twisted my resolve. I hesitated, my mind racing. This had been a moment of sheer terror, and now it was laced with confusion. Should I fight or should I flee? Please, I just want to get out, I stammered, my voice a strangled whisper. Out? There's nothing out there for you, it said, and with that it turned, slipping further into the darkness, almost like a shadow dissolving into midnight. Part of me wanted to chase it, to demand answers. But the better part of my instinct told me to move in the opposite direction. This wasn't a game, this was survival. I stepped cautiously inside the room, straining my eyes to adjust. Racks of old supplies cluttered the space. Dust and cobwebs hung like drapes, and the air felt heavy, stale. My pulse quickened with each step, and the tension coiled in my stomach. I found myself at another exit, an old window, cracked and grimy, barely held together. My hands trembled as I examined it. Could I fit through? It was worth a shot. Then, the whisper returned, more urgent this time. You're running out of time. I froze. The weight of the words was suffocating. I glanced back toward the door where the figure had vanished. My throat tightened with fear, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to act. With a grunt, I pushed on the window, the frail wood splintering with a creak. Just as I got the frame open wide enough to slip through, the room plunged into darkness. My heart leapt. I cursed under my breath, fumbling through the abyss. The faintest hint of light filtered through the window, but it was barely enough to guide me. I could hear them now, the footsteps were closer, a quickening pace. Panicking, I scrambled through the window, the jagged edge catching my clothes. I bit my lip to stifle a cry as I fell to the ground outside. Grit pressed into my palms as I pushed myself up, the chill of the night air hitting me like a slap. I was in an alley behind the gas station. The moon hung overhead, casting thin beams of light that barely pierced the shadows. But the eeriness didn't ease. The whisper was weaving in and out around me, sounding muffled yet close. You should have stayed. I turned, and to my dismay, the figure was back, stepping out from the shadows. Its eyes glinted with an unnerving light, its grin now a grotesque stretch across its face. My back pressed against the wall, and for the first time, I felt the paralyzing grip of terror take hold. Guess you're not getting out that easily, it hissed, and with that, the darkness seemed to swirl, plunging me deeper into the nightmare. Now I had no choice but to confront the unknown. I could feel every drumming heartbeat in my ears, and with uncertainty, I took a hesitant step forward. But before I could even gather my thoughts, the figure lunged, and I knew this was only the beginning of something I was utterly unprepared for. I took a shaky breath and prepared for the worst. The figure lunged, but rather than striking me, it froze midair. Its form quivered, flickering like a candle flame in the wind. I took a step back, heart pounding wildly as confusion gripped me. Was it a trick of the light? My eyes desperately scanned the alley, looking for an escape. You don't understand. It sneered, voice dripping with disdain, piercing through the silence. You think you can run from what you can't comprehend? I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to will the nightmare away. This had to be a dream, maybe a side effect of the exhaustion from the night shift. But the cold air against my skin felt all too real. Listen, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I just want to leave. If you can help me, please. Its expression twisted into something almost human, a flicker of curiosity breaking through the malevolence. Help? Is that really what you want? Or do you want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes? I blinked, my mind racing. In the back of my head, I could hear the whisper again, you're running out of time. I didn't want to play their game. Just then, I noticed something glinting on the ground near my feet. I crouched down, picking up what appeared to be a crumpled piece of paper. It was a map, marked with a series of locations. One of them was just a few blocks away, and next to it was a chilling scrawl, "Follow me to find your way." Looking for answers? The figure taunted, its mouth curling into a grin that didn't reach its eyes. You won't like what you find. I glanced from the map back to the figure, weighing my options. The urge to flee screamed at me, but the inkling of curiosity pulled me in. The map might lead to an escape or at least shed some light on what I'd stumbled into. I need to know, I finally said, forcing strength into my voice. If you know something, just tell me. The figure stepped forward, its grin now sinister. Are you sure you want to know the truth? Sometimes, not knowing is better. My pulse quickened. I was already knee-deep in a mess of darkness, but something told me it wasn't the end. Try me, I said defiantly. With a flick of its wrist, the figure melted back into the shadows, leaving me alone in the alley with the map. I felt exposed, every instinct screaming at me to run. But if I stayed, maybe I'd discover why it had turned up like this. Then everything went quiet. The moon, my only source of light, dimmed until it barely illuminated the ground beneath me. In that moment of pitch-black silence, I heard something else, a soft rustling sound, just beyond the darkness where the figure had disappeared. I barely had time to process it when a new figure emerged, completely different from the first. This one moved with purpose, and as it stepped into the light, I realized it was a woman. Her features were sharp and determined, and a sense of urgency radiated from her. There's no time, she urged, looking around nervously. They're coming for you. I felt my stomach drop. What exactly was I in for? What do you mean they're coming for me? I managed to stammer, still grappling with the dark presence that lingered in my thoughts. The woman grabbed my arm, her grip firm and resolute. I'll explain later, but right now we need to move. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes darting back into the shadows where the figure had vanished. Wait, who are you? I asked, pulling back slightly. Confusion layered over my fear. Why does it matter? Why me? You really have no clue, do you? She shook her head, frustration seeping into her voice. Listen, there are things at play here you don't understand. That map, she pointed to the crumpled paper still clutched in my hand, it's not just directions. It leads to a truth that they'll do anything to keep hidden. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that I didn't ask for any of this, but I knew better than to argue with someone who seemed to know more than I did. So instead, I took a steadying breath and nodded. Okay, fine. What's the plan? Without a word, she began leading the way, pulling me along through the alley. The cold air wrapped around us, nipping at my skin. I stole glances toward the shadows we left behind, half expecting to see the menacing figure reemerge. We turned a corner, and suddenly she stopped and looked at me with fierce intensity. What's your name? Ellie, I replied apprehensively, watching her expressive eyes. Ellie. I'm May. She took a moment to focus, scanning our surroundings. Keep this close, she said, tapping the map. It might help when we reach the first location. My mind raced with questions. Why me? What's on that map? Who are they? Hold your questions for now, May said quietly, the urgency returning to her tone. We have to get to the warehouse. It's your best shot. I frowned. What warehouse? Just trust me. The farther we get from here, the safer you'll be. The closer we get to finding out what this is about. As we moved further into the night, I glanced at the map again. The nearest location was marked with a small, ominous symbol I hadn't noticed before. A faint chill ran down my spine. "What is this symbol?" I asked, stopping abruptly. May turned to face me, her expression serious. "It signifies a door. A door to possibilities. But you need to be ready for whatever comes next. It may not just lead you out. It can lead to things you can't imagine." I hesitated, my instincts rusty from too many nights spent inside the confines of the gas station. There was a part of me that screamed to run home, but here I was, connected to something bigger than myself. Just then, a sudden noise echoed in the alley behind us, a dull scraping sound that sent a wave of panic through my veins. "Go!" May shouted, and we sprinted forward, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever awaited us at the warehouse was just a prelude. As we rounded another corner, and the noise faded behind us, I tossed the map in my pocket, fingers trembling. Not far ahead, a flickering light drew closer, and I could hear faint sounds, muffled but growing nearer. I took a deep breath. What was waiting for me at the end of this chase? Would it shed light on everything, or was it just another layer of mystery hiding a much darker reality? I had to know. The warehouse loomed ahead, skeletal and ominous against the night sky. My heart raced as I followed May, each footstep echoing against the concrete floor. Subtle shivers prickled my skin, a chill that had less to do with the cold and more to do with the palpable tension in the air. "This is it," May said, glancing back toward the way we'd come. "We have to be quick." "What are we looking for?" I asked, the question spilling out before I could hold it back. She nodded toward a metal door situated at the far end of the warehouse. "A way in. It might lead us to the truth." With a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. What truth? What had I gotten myself into? As we approached the door, I glanced around, wary of the shadows dancing along the walls. They seemed to taunt me, shifting and morphing as if alive. "They're coming," the whisper echoed in my head again. With a metallic clang, May pushed the door open, revealing stairs leading down into darkness below. "Let us go," she urged, the urgency in her voice compelling me forward despite the dread simmering beneath the surface. I squeezed my eyes shut for the briefest moment as I stepped into the oppressive dark. "What's down there?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Answers," was all she said, glancing around, her expression tense. "At least that's what I hope." We descended the stairs cautiously, May in front, her silhouette barely visible against the dim light filtering through cracks in the walls. With each step, the air grew cooler and thicker, as if it were weighted with secrets and unspoken words. At the bottom, we found ourselves in a spacious cellar, lined with shelves filled with dusty crates and various oddities. The flickering lights illuminated strange artifacts that looked like they belonged in a museum of the macabre. "What is all this?" I whispered, bewildered as I ran my fingers over a glass orb that pulsed silently with an otherworldly glow. "Things they don't want anyone to find," May said grimly, shaking her head. "This is a hub, a crossroads, if you will, of realities." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, a sharp sound sliced through the silence behind us. I spun around, adrenaline surging. "What was that?" "You need to see this," she insisted, darting toward the far wall. A paper pinned to a corkboard caught her attention. I followed her, but fear tugged at my mind. It felt as if we were being cornered. "I don't like this." "Focus, Ellie," May said, pointing to the paper littered with strange symbols and scribbles, referencing locations and a web of connections that felt impossibly vast. "This is it. This is how it all ties together." I looked closer, scanning the symbols which matched those I'd seen on the map. The places, they're all connected to something, I realized, a cold realization creeping in. "Exactly," she said, urgency creeping back into her voice as she rifled through the surrounding items. "We have to put the puzzle together before they find us." Just then, the door we entered through slammed shut with a force that shook the ground. The darkness swirled as if awake now, pulsing with malicious energy. May's eyes widened in panic. "You have to help me." Dread flooded through me, wrestling with my instincts to flee, but there was no escape now. Whatever the truth was, it was demanding to be uncovered even if it meant confronting the darkness. As I extended my hand to help May, a guttural roar echoed from the stairs, reverberating off the cellar walls. I jerked back, terror gripping my heart as the air thickened with something more than just fear. It smelled like smoke again, the taste bitter and acrid. "It's him," May whispered, terror flooding her voice. "Yes, here." In that moment, instinct kicked in. We were no longer just unraveling a mystery, we were fighting for survival. I glanced around, spotting various items that could serve as weapons. "We need to defend ourselves." As May began grabbing a metal rod from the shelf, my focus shifted back to the creeping darkness pooling near the stairwell. Shadows darted and danced like restless spirits, whispering promises of despair. "Ellie!" May shouted, snapping me back to attention. I turned just in time to catch the glint of something slipping out of the shadows. A figure skeletal, with a grin stretched grotesquely wide, pushed forward. The air crackled with a bone-deep knowing, the chase was over. "Stay back!" I shouted, gripping the bat harder. But as the figure neared, something else caught my eye. It was an alchemical symbol, glowing faintly against the darkness, a patch of light and the swirling chaos. "There!" I yelled, pointing toward it. "The symbol, it means something." "I know," May replied through gritted teeth, her eyes scanning the room. "We need it to unlock the crossroads. Trust me." Without thinking, I lunged for the symbol, the weight of fear driving me forward. The figure hissed with fury as I reached the glowing mark. I touched it, feeling a surge of energy ripple through me. In that moment, everything shifted, the darkness recoiled, and the air shimmered. "Quick! We have to activate it!" May yelled, scrambling beside me. Together, we traced the outlines of the symbols with our fingers. As we did, the very walls around us began to pulsate, thrumming like a heartbeat. The whispers grew louder, drowning out the figure's growl. It howled in rage and desperation, but we were on the verge of something that could either save us or devour us. With one last push, we completed the symbols and everything exploded into light. I felt a rush, as if the world around us had dissolved and was being remade, shifting and shimmering. The figure howled in despair, its form disintegrating into fragments of shadow. But as the light swelled, there was no telling where this would lead. Time seemed to bend, and clarity mingled with chaos. And then I was falling, tumbling through fiery glimmers of raw energy, with the taste of smoke still in my mouth. When it all stopped, I landed hard on familiar asphalt, my heart pounding, gasping for breath. I peered around, blinking into the harsh sunlight. I was back outside the gas station. The lights were on, the air crisp. I was alone. But I knew it wasn't over. Part of me still resonated with the lingering chaos, and questions churned through my mind. The gas station was my old life. Did that darkness truly belong to this reality, or had it followed me into the light? As I staggered back toward the entrance, the whisper echoed softly one last time, a warning, a memory, or perhaps simply a mockery of my return. Whatever had happened, the truth was still out there. And I felt it calling.